Oz and Jordan don't have to do that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 31. That's season 2, episode number 11. Hey, Oz. How you doing, man?
Man, I am worked up. Dick Moffat has brought some energy here, and I find out that he's a comrade in a lot of ways, and I am loving Rick's Marine Corps hairstyle. Semper Fi, brother.
Yeah, well, you did say Rick, but I do think you meant
Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan.
But that's okay.
Semper Fi.
That is okay. I have been conscripted into the Excel Army here in sunny Cleveland. How are you, Dick?
I'm fine. How are you guys doing?
Delicious.
Oh, we're great. We're great.
You're great. Oh, good. And humble, too.
So, everyone, hello. This is Rick, rickgrantham.com, also of excel.tv. Tonight is brought to you by Northeast Florida, the Big Ass Map, and Big Ass McDonald's drink. I know you're thinking to yourself, hey, Excel TV host, how can I get fatty liver without all that hops and barley aftertaste? McDonald's Big Ass drink. It's what's for supper. And Jordan, would you please take us away with
Sure. And you know, I actually have. Tonight is sponsored by LaCroix, which is America's freshest non-alcoholic water. Now, if that is a real thing, I don't think that it is. Let's jump to the challenge. This one was kind of a doozy, let's say, because we really didn't have a whole lot of answers to it. We didn't have a whole lot of correct answers. So I had asked you, I had said many function Excel have the same name in Power Pivot. So name a function Excel with a different name than its DAX counterpart. Now I knew of one such pair, and I learned that pair from Bill Jelen, Mr. Excel himself. He did tell me what it was. They are, let's see here, format and text. So what do I mean by that? Format is a, in VBA, helps you, will take a string and it will format it in a certain way. And then text does that as a function. So that's really important when I say format does it in VBA, because that is what the function in DAX was copied off of. It was off of format and not text. So that is just one example in DAX of two functions that don't have the same name but do very similar things between Excel and DAX. So this one wasn't so popular. We didn't have any challenge winners, so I figured let's go with a simpler one. Something that everyone's excited about, everyone is talking about, the new chart types in Excel 2016 preview. So what are those chart types? If you think you know the answer to that, you can scream it at the top of a mountain, but instead of doing that, you can also go to excel.tv and answer this week's puzzle on the webpage, or you can tweet it at ExcelTV, or go to our Facebook, facebook.com ExcelTV series.
All right.
And that is
and you
this
know
week.
what? And you know what?
What's up?
We pick two winners. All right. And I'm going to give a copy of Gorilla Data Analysis Second Edition to one of the two winners.
Okay, all right, and I will be sending out. I did mean to say what our prize was. Sometimes I forget doing that. I was going to send out a PDF copy of my book, Advanced Excel Essentials.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have two winners and we'll have two prizes. Good luck and have fun.
And don't hurt yourself.
Two winners, two prizes. Things are getting crazy, but let's get a little bit more crazy. This week we have a very special guest, all the way from Canada, Mr. Dick Moffat, who is the purveyor over there at Dick Moffat's spreadsheet blog. Dick, just to start off with, greetings, and what did you do before you got into spreadsheets?
I spent 10 years as a commodity trader.
Oh.
Where you buy and sell corn and soybeans and trade currencies and all that stuff. And my own line was, they say that commodity traders sleep like babies. They wake up in the night screaming. So I got tired of doing a job which was 99% BS. It was like, why'd the market go up? Because more buyers and sellers, stuff like that. So I just walked away, and I bumped into a thing called VisiCalc. And so VisiCalc ended up catching my attention one day when I was at one of my clients. And by the time I drove home, my life had changed completely. I decided that that was what I was going to do for a living. And then shortly after that, Lotus 1-2-3 came out, and so I became a world's expert on 1-2-3. I mean, fundamentally, I was like an idiot savant when it came to spreadsheets. I was just very quickly very good at it. And luckily, somebody called me to help at a client they had where they knew more than he did. And so I went there, and I worked for that client for 20 years as a consultant. That was the biggest brewery in Canada. So that was kind of a good start. Made me think, right? So then I quit the grain business and became a consultant in 1985. How many of you guys were born then? No, sorry. But
Yeah.
I was born.
You joined the Navy.
I was born
okay.
that year.
Oh, there you go, George. So anyway, and then it goes from there. It's a fairly long story, obviously, so I won't bore you with it. But it involved Lotus, and then it evolved to Windows 3.0 came out, so I evolved to Excel, and then Access came out, and I one of the guys at Microsoft, who's still a good friend of mine, gave me a copy of Access and said, learn this. And my dad needs an application developed, so I started before version 1, and I'm still doing it because I keep asking myself, do people really need this? Yes. You know, the problem lately is getting people to realize they need it, but that's something we can talk about later, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, boys, right?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Dick, you've seen quite a few business cycles. Then, would you mind talking a little bit about the leap that you made from doing consulting, through all the different spreadsheet programs to putting your own shingle out on the internet and starting your own blog? What facilitated that?
Wow. A friend of mine, Simon Murphy, had a blog, and his Smurf on spreadsheets. He's an Englishman.
Yes.
And he's a really good guy. And so he talked to me. He said, why don't you have a blog? So I decided to have my own blog, and that's what I did. But my idea of a blog is this is my opinion on things, as opposed to this is how you do stuff, right? Which is why I'm not an MVP, because I don't give stuff away, right? So that's literally the idea of an MVP is you have to answer questions on the internet. I go on and I talk about issues, right? And my theory is people should figure some things out for themselves, but that's all right. So anyway, that's where I got into a blog.
Wow.
Plus, I had opinions.
So you share what's an opinion?
Well, for example, when I started out, my goal was to promote best practices in Excel and in Access, and to promote the whole entire idea of a professionalism in those technologies, and how important it is for our clients, and how important it is for us to be good at what we do, and that it's a lot more than just tips and tricks. It's a whole, it's a career, it's a professional.
Yeah.
And then about 8 years ago, I evolved into the anti-office, not the anti-office, but I didn't like what Microsoft's direction. And so frankly, a lot of my blog was saying I don't like this that they're doing, I don't like that they're doing. I've always been constructively critical. I will always, I'm a big fan of Microsoft, I'm a huge fan of Excel and Access. I just don't like the way they've handled the franchise, and that's what my blog has been about largely over the last few years. And will continue until they wake up and realize what an incredible piece of technology they have sitting there on everybody's desk around the world being underutilized. And I don't know what to do about it. I mean, I know what to do. I made a decision to be a thorn in their side at personal risk, right? So I have somebody start my car for me every morning. Right?
So what is something you think about is how has Microsoft contributed to the underutilization of this powerful tool?
Well, they're obsessed with selling licenses, and for the last 5 years, and so the whole thing has been their whole focus was with Access, and with Access it was end user, turning Access into an end user tool. Which right off the bat I said, "Are you kidding me? Are you serious?" And then with Excel it was we want to promote to the lowest common denominator. we want to sell Excel. And the evidence of that is that they're now shipping Office for Windows with a version of Excel on all these devices that doesn't have macros in it. And to me, VBA, every spreadsheet has to have some VBA on it if you want somebody else to use it other than yourself. And they really don't care about spreadsheets designed by people like us for use by people who don't know Excel. That's a model. Why would they have built all that functionality in VBA into Excel if at one time they didn't get that? But in the last few years, they've completely forgotten that. And they may not even deny that. So I believe Excel is an end-user tool. It's a great end-user tool. But I believe, and my blog has pointed this out, that that companies are using it for more and more rather than less and less, because IT won't do the departmental solutions anymore, and the only tool they have left is Excel, and yet huge numbers of people are doing. A lot of people are doing crappy Excel spreadsheets, not because they're bad people, but because they have other jobs and they're basically amateur Excel developers.
Yeah, compelled to go rogue.
Right. So I would like to see a class of developers who are Excel professionals who can help them. But again, as my blog pointed out about procurement and preferred vendors, it's getting harder and harder to get into the corporations that need us. Sorry, Rick, I guess I got going there.
No, it's all right.
That's all good.
I've got more questions. I don't know if anybody else have questions.
I do have a question.
It's nice. I can see Rick rolling his eyes. That's really kind of handy.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So, you also have your own consulting business. So, can you tell us a little bit about, what prompted you to really? I know you said that you went into VisiCalc, but what really made you want to go out on your own and be your own boss? Was there what do you enjoy about it? So just talk about. Sorry, I know I'm rambling on because I love all these things.
No, I understand the question.
But yeah.
Why did I do this? Why did
I
do this, and why have I done it for 30 years? It's because when I was in the grain business, I did an awful lot of mathematics using a calculator. And then when I first saw the VisiCalc, in the grain business, you buy something here, and you move it to here, and then you dump it into a boat, and then you move it to there, and then you take into account exchange rate, and then you sell it at that price. If any one of those factors in the middle changes, it's going to change your price at the destination. And I used to do that all manually. As soon as I saw a spreadsheet, I could say, oh, the exchange rate changed. I changed one value, there's my answer. And that is what changed my life. That was it. I said, this is it. And then I thought, every business in the world can use this. And I was right.
Did your jaw drop when you saw it? Were you like,
absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, in 30 minutes driving home from this place, it changed my whole entire life, and it's never been the same since. And it's kept me gainfully employed for all this time.
That's crazy. We had Dan Filestra, who was one of the one of the three first guys involved in VisiCalc about a month and a half or so ago. Mm-hmm. And his comment was, whenever they first brought it to one of their professors, it kind of had his pulse on the industry over at, I think it was at MIT, I think. Mm-hmm. Said, or maybe it was Harvard. Said, what do you think about this? He was very, he basically said, this isn't going to sell for the most part. My reaction, I would hope, would have been kind of like yours. My jaw would have dropped and said, "Oh my God, how does the professor not see that?"
Right. Yeah, because he's sorry, but yeah, I know a lot of great professors. Don't get me wrong, all your professors out there. No.
But
he was tenured. He was tenured. Right.
I'm curious. I want to go back when you said that the idea about Access as an end user's tool, and you said, oh really? And want to ask you about why is it so hard to get into corporations, as you were saying?
Oh, because over the last 5 years or so, well, first of all, they've always hated spreadsheets. Right? IT has always hated spreadsheets because they can't control it. They consider it a virus. They also considered Access a virus, right? So that is not new. That is, for years, what do you do for a living? I do spreadsheets for a living. right? It was embarrassing, right? Then there was about 10 years where it wasn't embarrassing, and now it's back to being embarrassing again. And what has happened is IT doesn't like spreadsheets, has to control everything. Sorry, IT, it's a fact. And then once they used, business managers used to have their own money they could spend on people like us, and now IT manages all that. You can't, right? Plus, IT's put in preferred vendors at the large corporations. Right. So the big consulting firms are in there, and we can't. And the big consulting firms don't care anything about Excel. They have no interest in doing work in Excel. Even when you talk about Microsoft's BI, they still glaze over, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no way you can really get through the cracks unless you were already inside. And that's fine, because you can talk to a lot of guys out there who say, oh, I got lots of business. It's because you've had that client for 10, 15 years. Lose that client, and you will find it a whole different world, right? Everybody looks at everything from their personal perspective, right?
Right.
Because, you know, I've been around so long that I work for major corporations that don't exist anymore, right? Like many, right? I've had companies just disappear right under my feet. I did a BI solution in Excel for Citibank in 1994 that accessed OLAP from Excel, and it was awesome, and they used it for 4 years, and then they merged with Travelers, and everybody I worked with was gone, including my app, right? And that's over and over. When you work for 30 years, that happens over and over and over again. So, and that's fine, because I always have had an ongoing, because I work for a lot of companies. If you saw my resume, which actually is a problem now because I'm overqualified. That's the other thing. People used to never say you're overqualified. They always hired me because I was the best at what I did that they knew. And now they look at me and go, oh, A, you're old, and B, you're overqualified.
Wow. Well, but let me say, okay, so I've worked with the smaller businesses where, you know, a lot of people wear a lot of hats, you know, the owner, you know, sees some merit in Excel, and they can make the decision. So I haven't experienced the enterprise since I was laid off in 2008.
All my business has been enterprise.
Okay.
I avoid small business.
Okay. And is there a reason?
They don't pay.
No, they don't. I knew you were going to say that. You know, they come in and they say, oh, well, you'll do this, and, you know, maybe down the line we can trade some equity or help a brother out, you know, like, help us out.
Or you'll build something for them. You'll build something for them that satisfies their needs now, and then they change, and then they go, oh, but you should have put it. It's terrible. It's something to do with the mindset. It's a question. They just don't have the money, and the problem is I'm a business person. We're all trying to make a living just like they are.
Right,
and Excel has never been considered a professional enterprise.
Well, you know, I don't know how much I can disagree with you, because, right, we talk from our own perspective, and I've preferred working with the smaller businesses.
Good for you.
Oh.
Good, that's great, as long as you got paid.
Yeah, because for one thing, I don't feel like I've got to twist arms. You know, my best clients have been those who have some sense of what Excel can do. True. Enough to know, I know it can do more, but I can't figure it out. So then they call Oz, they call somebody else, and get a solution in and write the check.
Well, this is the thing, write the check. The other thing about large business, and anybody who's a small business person, I don't mean to insult you, but when you're a consultant, you work for a large business, you can add zeros on the end of everything you do, because and then their checks aren't going to bounce. Lately, the big issue is they won't pay you for 120 days. That's the latest thing, right? I mean, that's another problem. Or they'll take forever to process your PO, and you won't be able to start for 6 months, right? That kind of stuff. That didn't used to happen. I used to get a call, and I'd be on my way to Labrador to a mine the next day, that kind of stuff, right? To do a big project. Nowadays, it's much more difficult. Like, really, large businesses are a problem because they need Excel so badly, but there's no way to help them. That's what I see. And maybe small businesses.
Oh, you're saying large businesses?
Yeah, they need Excel. And look at all the work Microsoft put into Excel, all the Power Pivot, all the Power Query, all this extra capability.
And
and
that's
it's all
fascinating.
underutilized.
That's fascinating because when I think back to being at an enterprise and with an IT department and everything,
Mm-hmm.
IT was not, this heaven for me because my problems were too small.
Yes, but now
Yeah.
once you start tapping into the corporate data, suddenly you pop up like whack-a-mole, and they see your head and whack,
Right. Oh
right?
yeah.
You know.
Well, I'm small and quick and durable.
Yeah.
And yes, they'll say, well, how did you get this? How did you do that? Yeah, so I'm aware for you. I don't disagree with you there, but where I'm agreeing with you is about I did need help. My 3-day process, because I didn't know about VLOOKUPs and pivot tables, there was nobody to help me getting any kind of training that, that wasn't going to happen. That's IT stuff. Go to IT. Well, they said they can help me in a week. That's not going to work. So I get what you're saying there about the help is needed, but how do you get it in there?
That's what I'm trying to figure out now.
Yeah.
And like my feeling is that I'm not being pessimistic. I just think it's a real hard sell right now, and I think that there's only one company that can change that, and they're not going that direction right now. We know who they are, right?
Yeah.
And it's in their interest, but they don't seem they have other fish to fry.
So, Dick, would you mind talking a little bit, since you've seen quite a few of the cycles, and when we talk with people who do this for a living, they're consulting for a living, and I'm thinking about people like Kevin Jones and Zach Reese, and people who are just doing development, day in, day out, and they've been doing it for a while. Some of the first things they say is, they basically have their own approach to how they do development. They have their own best practices, and they have this that they bring to the table right off the bat. What is your general approach recently, or that you've developed over time to develop?
Okay, my number one approach is to develop a solution that works, and that so they don't have to call me every 3 weeks to say, oh, by the way, can you fix this, can you fix that. Second approach is I ask them a whole lot of stupid questions, because I got to understand their business. And that's one of the hardest things is I'm not a miner. I'm not a banker. I'm not I don't run a pharmaceutical company. I have to understand their business so I can build a solution that satisfies their process needs in such a way that they can run it themselves without having to call me every 2 days to change something. That's my approach, right? And then second of all, in terms of best practices, I've developed skills and I apply those skills all the time. You can make an argument that my solutions look the same. Well, there's a reason for that, is that when I go back to them 10 years later, I know what I did. But I'm not stuck on what I did 10 years later. I'm always progressing, but I'm progressing from a base, right? So I'm adding more skills incrementally, but best practices to me means consistency. Like I've always told people on Access, on their forums, it doesn't really matter if you're compliant with some design theory, as long as when the user goes from this form to that form to that form, they look and feel the same. The buttons that do the macro stuff, like the close and the save and print, are all in the same spot and all that, right?
Yeah.
So there's your answer to your question, right? Plus the biggest one is the asking of dumb questions and really understanding their business process. And they don't always give you time to do that. And that's where experience comes in. That's when you can sort of figure it out. Once you've done a whole lot of these things, you can sort of start and then fill in the gaps later, which is an argument for being old, right? Do you know what I mean? Because, experience is everything. Does that make sense, guys?
Absolutely.
You're speechless.
I believe you have one more question, then we're going to move on.
Yeah. Okay, so my question is, as Excel develops, it is getting this Power Query and all. It starts to look and feel like a database in some ways, and a lot of people don't like that. Is it get a real database? Don't fool around with Power Query, Power Pivot, all that stuff. So what do you say about that?
Well, you're absolutely right. You should use a big database, for collecting data. but you use Excel for analyzing data, right?
Okay.
And for anything that's very relatively small that you could keep in a spreadsheet. But it's always better to have your data in a database. My job has been to pull data into Excel and analyze it and produce reports. But I do some solutions where they put the data in Excel because that's what they want and that's all they have. And I tend to build them using data tables, using data validation, structured references. I use, if I have to, I use VBA code to manage it. So I prevent giggle, right? I do everything I can in Excel to prevent giggle. And if it's a multi-user environment, I think about that. And how am I going to do that with my data in Excel when I'm going to have multiple people opening it? There's ways you can manage it, right? Like for example, this is, I don't know why, but in 1985, I wrote a Lotus solution that was data-centric. It was tables that I imported, file, combine, bringing them in and sending them back out. I have one guy who still uses that. 25 years later, he has a computer in the corner running Lotus 123, and he uses it to run his business, and because nobody's ever built anything that does the same thing. So so yeah, I'm the biggest fan of the data capabilities of Excel now, but not for data input if you can avoid it. But if you have to do it, I can do it.
Right.
Can do it.
The last question: when you said that relatively small amounts of data that Excel can have, what do you call small?
Oh, a few hundred. Few hundred actually may be too big in a lot of cases. Like and I know that flies in the face of what a lot of people are doing with it. And one of the other problems is you can't get access to a database. I just went through that with one major Canadian bank in the last 2 days, talking about a solution that we're thinking of building. And the argument was, well, we got to do it in Excel because that's the only tool we have available to us, right? And I can do that. I told them I can do that. And now they're thinking about it. I don't like having to do it, but I can do it. It'll cost them more in a way because, here's the thing. When you start with Excel, you have everything, and then you have to work really hard to control everything. When you start with Access or Visual Studios, you start with nothing, and then you add what you want. This is the biggest problem with Excel. Everything is right there in front of you. and the users can screw anything up they want innocently, right? Mm-hmm. I build solutions, and we all should target building Excel solutions that can be used with people who don't know Excel. That's how businesses will get value out of this technology. And that every month will roll over, or every quarter will roll over automatically, so they don't have to, like I said, call me every time they want to change something. And we would sell, ironically, an awful lot of licenses of Office 365 doing that.
I do think that you're right about one thing. Excel is one big piece of paper, and everybody's got a crayon.
That's right. That's right. But it's a smart crayon, a smart piece of paper, and it's underutilized. You know what Excel is? It's like a 747 sitting in your driveway, and everybody gets in it and goes zoom, 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 zoom. That's right. That's what's happening. Excel is so much more capable than anybody gives it credit for. Some very, very, very smart guys built a lot of capability into that product. You just think about what's in that product. They believe that it was more than just a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I challenge my peers to speak up when people start beating on Excel. And
Amen.
They don't know what Excel is doing. They don't know.
And yet that doesn't stop them from having that doesn't stop them from having an opinion. That's another thing that makes me mad. Is that in the old days, people would ask me, can you do this for me? I have a business process. Here's my business process. And I would go build a solution. Nowadays, they all tell you how they want it done. They all, they all have opinions on how spreadsheets work. Like you said, there's the old traditional style with formulas and lookups and stuff. And then there's a whole new data-driven version of Excel, which is so much better, so much more capable, so much more powerful, produces exactly the same results but in a good way. But you try showing that to people, and it's like a deer in the headlights. They go, I don't understand. And again, that's like, ooh, and that's where I get the problem is that the message hasn't been properly sold.
All right. So on that note, we got to move on to our section.
Come on.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. But it does have to do with what you're saying about the message.
Okay.
This week's topic. No, this is a good lead-in. This is a great segue point. This week's topic is about starting your own Excel blog. I often get questions, and I'm sure you do too. All of us have blogs here about how to start your very own Excel blog. So, Dick, what do you think? I come to you. I say I want to start blogging on Excel. What do people care about? What should I write about? Or should I just write whatever I want?
Yeah.
What would you do? What advice would you give?
Well, all I can say is what I do is I write what I I've thought a while ago. I realized that I'm kind of an office politician more than is sort of what I am, and I talk about issues and things I don't like and things I really do like at a high level, right? Based on all my experience. So I'm just drilling a hole in my head and letting all my knowledge fall into this blog, right? Generically. If you're a younger person, you could do the same thing and talk about it. I know everybody thinks that the whole thing is around tips and tricks, and I'm not the biggest fans of that. I'm a fan of the old, who was it, Malcolm Gladwell, who had this theory that you got to spend 20,000 hours on something before you're an expert. Well, I'm that guy, right, that I believe you have to do 10 million spreadsheets to really, in hundreds of different businesses to really understand it. Because it's actually harder than a database. A database, in some ways, is just a question of determining the process flows and building tables and relationships. Spreadsheets they're all over the place, right? Every spreadsheet is a snowflake, right? Therefore, and so you can show people tips and tricks, and fine. But what about this? And what about that situation? What about that situation? I'm not sure how. So you could do a blog that talks about those issues.
I think we all sort of think about that a lot, because when I started my blog, I started with tips, and now I just have very long-winded opinions about things, which with the tips sort of woven in. But now and I know Oz and I have talked about this, about not doing just more than what everyone else does. What do you think, Oz? I mean, someone says I want to start a blog out. What do I write about? What do you write about? That sort of stuff. How do you answer?
Well, what I start out with is Chris Brogan's A Primer for Blogging. Okay, I've shared that out so much. And he's got 21 rules, and number 20 is you're doing it wrong, so is everyone. So that's like, lighten up. Just blog.
Do it.
Yeah,
Just
do it. But there's some things to watch out for. You got this big burning idea, and you're behind the scenes writing this epic blog post that you want everybody to read drafts of. So wait a minute. With a blog, it's longevity. And you are not going to have longevity if you are starting out, trying to write epic blog posts out of the gate. And so that's where a lot of bloggers do fail, is they've got these first 3 that they've published over 3 months, and the blog is dead.
Exactly. Like I wrote one big, huge blog once, and every day 100 people go to that. It's called How to Manage Connections in Power Pivot Using Data Connections in Excel, which is, for some reason, I'm the only person, not really, who figured it out. Other people have commented on it, but I was first. But the fact is, ever since then, my blogs, I try to keep them readable, and a nice read. You guys all agree with that, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't finish all your points, have another blog that goes on to the next point, right? That's the most important.
So your experience is consistent with my experience, Dick. I found that even on Excel TV, even on that blog, which is only, we've only really put focus on it for about 6 months or so, the ones that are the most popular are the ones that are the ones that are the most in depth, where you could tell the person who was writing it, whether it was Oz or Jordan or me, They put a lot of passion into it. There's a lot of screenshots. There's a lot of, and people go to those. I mean, and so there's like a handful of those, and those are just, you could tell your heart was put into it, right?
But you can't do that all the time.
That's my point, though. Right. So that's the once every 3 month kind of blog post, and if you for us, that's about the way it comes out with your passion. Right. But for the most part, a good portion of them are just, hey, here's 4 paragraphs on what I think about this. Here's some screenshots. Here's something that goes along with the video. Here's something, And so, I mean, it's like trying to put out a #1 hit every single time. Every single week. That's tough. But there are some strategies that I found to be useful for people who are just starting out in this, right? And so I've started out, a few of these. And first off, write those first few posts where you have your passion and you start to make a name for yourself. What I found, there's a difference between writing what you're passionate about, which is a good portion of it, and the more you can do that, the best. But you also kind of need to pay the bills. And so once you've written enough of what you're passionate about, what I like to do is go to any of my stats that I can find and find what it is that Google is searching on whenever they find me. Not what I wish they would find me for. Not keyword research and what I wish they would find me for and that sort of thing. What are they finding me for today that they're passionate about, and they're finding me for those things, and then how can I expand on that?
Right. Yep.
And start to, so I almost kind of create a silo about something and just start expanding on that. So if they're finding me about drop downs, or they're finding me about Monte Carlo, or they're finding me about et cetera, where can I start to build on that and start to
run with it?
Exactly. And that, to your point, Dave, that can turn into 5 blog posts or so. And so, think about your content, think about the people who are already coming to you and what they're coming to you for.
Can I make? Oh, go ahead, Oz.
Well, there's one thing about that around analytics and what people are coming to the blog for, and I had to make some decisions because tips and tricks, those early blog posts that I did, they continue to generate the most traffic. But I couldn't sustain that and stay engaged myself. So my blog, for me, has been discovery of what I give a damn about.
That's all you should do.
Yeah, and so when I start thinking about, that's where I really got clear. Excel is a tool. And if you are bad at everything else that you are trying to serve with that tool, then the tool doesn't matter.
Yep.
So, do you get up off your ass and go figure out why this data is wrong? Ask somebody some questions. Are you scared of these people or what? That's what makes for a good analyst. And then the tool can be in service of all of that. And that only came about by what did I get fired up about, separate from what Google Analytics might suggest I should be writing about.
I know. I understand what Rick meant by that.
Oh yeah, I get it too. And so I don't disagree with that necessarily.
It's what people care about, right? So that's true.
Right, and you
throw in one more thing, and then I'll jump over to you, Jordan. I'm sorry I cut you off there.
No problem.
And one other thing that I found to be useful, and I've heard this from Minda Tracy and a few other people as I've been trying to kind of find my voice, I guess, is find your voice. I've heard this from quite a few people. Their names escape me right now.
You should find your voice.
Show some personality. Show who you are. Everything doesn't have to read like a damn textbook.
Amen.
And you see a lot of that when you go over to people say you go over to Dick's blog. His most recent blog post. You get an idea of what he thinks about. This is Dick's house. And you get an idea of what it's about. You go unless it's a real technical sort of thing, you get an idea of what I think about, and you'll hear some Southern slang and all that sort of stuff, and you get a lot of that over, with Oz as well. So don't be afraid to show some personality.
Be yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Jordan, sorry, you were going to make a point. You've been.
Yeah. No, this is such a great topic. We all have things we want to put in. So here's what I'll say, because a lot of people really say, well, what should I start out writing? And I think we all just sort of start out just sort of dumping the things like examples that we've done from our own work. But the real thing, when I think of content generation, I say, what articles do you wish existed? Because when you search for them, they didn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
because there's probably someone like you out there.
Mm-hmm.
So just do that. And I think because it's coming from you, and your voice is gonna be expressed through that, and then you're still in service of the community, which, that is the trade-off. Whether you do the silo search engine stuff, I'm not good at that. Rick is. That's why he does a good job on our website. But or do you do your own stuff? And it's really just a mixture of both. You can't go. You can be too self-indulgent and too audience-serving, in both ways.
The question
I think that's part of
is,
finding your voice.
why would somebody want to have a blog? I have a blog because I was mad as hell and I wasn't going to take it anymore, basically.
Right.
And I wanted to express my opinions on things that pissed me off.
Mm-hmm.
My wife always, when I'm writing a blog, she says, "What are you doing?" "I'm writing my blog post." "Is it going to make any money?" "Very good point, wife." and
Right.
and so I don't blog as much as I'd like. I've actually found one client from my blog.
Okay.
One client. A very large shoe manufacturer in Switzerland booked me and paid me a total of 2,500 euros for some consulting help. That was it. And then I got a humongous contract over the last 4 years, actually, now I think about it, with another company where one of my disciples called me, sent me an email and said, "Dick, this company's looking for you." So you're right, that actually was one. And it's turned into a huge client for that. That's why I was in Europe for a good part of this year. So don't think of it as a way to make money, because one thing you're doing, you're usually preaching to the choir, and you're also preaching to your competitors. I would love to have a blog which the people who went to the blog were all business decision makers. How do you get that, right? That's what, we need to somehow connect us to business decision makers. That's the thing. If you guys want to come up with something, that's the thing, sort of like a clearinghouse of ideas. Because when we talk to each other, there's a rude phrase about a bunch of guys in a circle. But anyway, that's the phrase that sometimes comes to mind when we all talk to each other. That's why I don't go to conferences unless they're paying me to speak, right? Or flying me someplace interesting, right? Like Australia, where I spoke. Because I don't want to sit around and talk to a bunch of guys who do what I do. Because they're my competitors. But I believe that what I think will affect all of us, so that's why I blog. Because I think I'm willing to fall on the sword in the interest of a better use of this technology for clients, for all of us, for young people who are coming into the business, and even for Microsoft.
Right.
Although they sure don't like me telling them how to run their business.
I'd like to make one more point here real quick, and then Oz, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and get set up for the tips. So, we get a chance to talk to a lot of people who are in the industry, and we talked to Chandu, and I heard this from Chandu, and I heard this from Minda Tracy over at Mile Lawn Training Hub, and they said, sometimes it takes me 2 days or more to get a blog post together. Everybody just assumes that I know all this stuff, and it's just flowing from me like a river. Yeah. And the truth is, a lot of times I'm doing a lot of research, and I'm figuring this out, and I'm figuring it out as I'm teaching it. And so don't think that you need to know everything to start writing. Don't think you need to know everything to start having a voice. You're going to learn. That'll be the best way. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You really want to learn something, prepare yourself to teach it.
But only learn something you think is going to make you money.
There you go.
Well, and the thing is to realize that it's not fast. It is a lot of work. It can take days to do. So generating, taking on writing a blog, it is some effort. And the last thing I'll share is, technically, if you're running your own blog, don't get something complicated that's got a marquees and sliders and all kind of other things going on, because you got to maintain that shit. And when you got all that stuff going on in the background and something crashes, now you got to find out which one of these plugins brought my site down.
Keep it under 5 plugins if you can. So, Oz, would you mind taking us away to the tip section?
Excel hot tips that burn your tongue right off your body. All right.
That sounds oddly rude. Anyway.
What?
They always are.
All right.
Go ahead, Oz.
Okay, so I'm going to share a tip with you. All right.
Waiting.
It's coming up. There it is.
All right. So, okay. So here we have some bull riding data. All right, so we have the bull riders, whether they're right or left-handed, their height and weight. We have the bulls and how heavy the bulls are. And then we have all the bull rides. You know, there was Tobacco Cat, Abram was the rider, and Abram got bucked off in 3 seconds, 3.43 seconds. Okay, so we have all these rides. So now, what if we want to know something about the bulls in relation to left or right-handers? Well, here are the results. And then here's the rider and a left or right-handed. So we create a data model, and I've shown data models previously. But what I want to show you is here we have the bull riders and the right and left-handed. But look at this little magnifying glass. We can look at the buck-offs for sweet sugar. 100% of the left-handers and 91.67% of the right-handers were bucked off. But who were these riders? Well, let's click on this magnifying glass. Uh-oh. We can drill down and see different data. Okay, let's drill down to the riders. Okay. There's the bull sweet sugar, and here are the right and left-handed riders who were all bucked off. And that is what I want to share with you, is that they call that the Quick Explorer, where you can drill down. And that is not in regular pivot tables. Here's a regular pivot table. No magnifying glass. So it is a data model feature. And that is what I have to share with you all. All right. And
Good stuff. Good stuff.
all right. And so I'm going to give that 4 srirachas, because you got to know, you know, this is a data model showed up in Excel 2013. And I tell you, these people in 2010 and 2007, won't you come join us? Please join us. Won't you come and get in on some of these data models in Quick Explore?
Excellent.
Come on in, everybody. The water's fine. Dick, you had a tip as well, correct?
Yeah, actually, I do. Let me share my desktop. Okay, that looks great. Okay, here. Are you watching? Do you see an Excel file in front of you?
Yep, all's good.
Yeah.
Bella May Mining. Okay. This is a model that uses a theory that I believe in. That when you're at that, well, it's like everything. It's a lot more complicated, this story, than just a couple of seconds can explain. But what I'm discovered is that a lot of people, there was a mix of Power BI and the idea that if you brought data into Power Pivot, you would bring everything into Power Pivot, and then you'd analyze it in Excel, right? So the Power Pivot, because it's effectively an OLAP tool in its own right, would put together your cubes for you based on transactional data, line OLTP data, right? So you bring everything in. Well, I realized very early on that I wanted to find a way to do this in Excel, because if you're going to bring in OLTP data, you pretty much have to move your data source to SharePoint or to Power BI, because you can't bring in millions of records into an Excel spreadsheet. For one thing, the refresh would just be painful, right? Do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the problem. And the other thing is with those things is they have a refresh that you can set in, but first of all, once you start moving up to a web-based solution, suddenly IT is going to take a notice of this. What are you doing up there, right? Okay, and so I like to fly under the radar, right? Second of all, so many solutions don't need that much data, but you only want to see certain. I'm not explaining myself because I'm trying to explain it quickly, but here's the deal. This is a production report. So if I go here, let me get rid of this. If I go here, this is 2014's production at these fictitious mines, which are a bunch of mines in Australia with a bunch of numbers that are fictitious. I can say, what happened on this day? What happened on that day? What happened on this day? And all of this is in Power Pivot. These are tables. Oh, mine's protected, okay? They're tables in Power Pivot that are contain the data, and then there's the various and sundry DAX formulas underneath it that are pulling my data back down and being used as the sources for these pivot tables for this sexy production chart, right? Where I can say, give me everything in February by mine, give me everything in this mine for the whole year, give me only surface mines, and this is all being driven by Power Pivot tables. But the interesting question is, if I'm a user and I come into this report, remember how I said I like reports that last forever? This goes back to 2008, and there's data. So this is pulling data from a database I wrote in 2008, and it's all been changed to protect the innocent or the guilty. But if I want to look at only 2015 so far, watch what happens when I click that button. Now there's an hourglass, and at the bottom you can't see, you can see it flashing at the bottom. What it's doing is it's doing a real-time re-query where it's pulling in all those tables, but only for data where the date of the truck, in this case, was in 2015. And so it's refreshing this data with only the data that there. And it took 30 seconds, but there's a lot going on here, right? And so what's happened is I've got two things happening. One is I have data queries that are Excel connections. And so I, for example, have a truck summary here. And what I do in this, I'm calling SQL Server, and I'm saying select star from function truck summary where the dates are between 01/2015 and 12/31/2015. So what I've done is when I change this, I actually changed the variable behind that. And let me show you how that's done. Now, I don't know how much time you guys have, but I think this is pretty valuable stuff. I have a list of the connections here. And these are the calls that I make. And so programmatically, in Excel, in VBA, I redefined the connection strings in Excel of the connection strings. Only in Excel. I can't do it in Power Pivot, not only because I can't do it in VBA, for one, and second of all, if I change something in Power Pivot, it's going to make that so I can't change anything in Excel. So I only change it in Excel. And when I do that, I run through these in code. And my code is actually fairly simple. It's called refresh connects. And I actually run through this process here, which says go through each connection, and it's the connections in that list you saw. Change the command text, which means if it's moved to another server, I can change that, by the way, and change my connection provider. Sorry, that's the command, that's the location, and this is my string, which would include a reference to 14 or 15 or 10 or 12 or whatever year I want. And then once it's done that, it refreshes all of them, which automatically refreshes Power Pivot and automatically refreshes all my charts. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Let's go back here, right? Now, this is huge because this file is very small, but it's querying a 1 million record database. It's a 1 million record table is the core of this. And there's two things I'm doing. One is I'm saying select where this date is the range, but the other thing is I'm calling a function in SQL, which means I'm calling a function which pre-aggregates my data. So I'm not bringing in OLTP data, I'm bringing in aggregated data based on the lowest common denominator, right? Therefore, I can create, because this is an analytics. I don't care about individual records, except I guess I care by day. That's it. That's my lowest common denominator. In this case, they could have 100 trucks a day. I don't care about trucks. I care how many trucks were in that day. And so I've taken 1 million records, and by filtering the time frame, which is only the time frame I care about, and by pre-aggregating, I've reduced the main table to like a couple of thousand records. All right?
Cool.
All right? Now, that is the thing that I have been promoting for like 4 years, and a whole bunch of people get it, but I know I'm swimming upstream against the powers that be in Power Pivot, right? They don't believe in this. It's a sacrilege, okay? Okay, so I'm still a believer in this, and now the Power BI has moved away from Excel, in effect. I think there's a possibility for this.
Oh man, yeah.
And the fact that Excel 2016 now is going to be around forever, and it will use all this, then I can build a solution here that you could use for 10, 20 years.
Yes.
Because Excel isn't going to change anymore. It's not. Plus, Windows is going to allow you to keep using it for a long time. Now, here's one last thing I want to show you, one trick. Everything I'm showing you here is actually happening on the Mac. I'm using a Mac. You're looking at a Mac screen.
Yeah.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I'm using a product called Remote Apps, which is a version is a version of RDP that's shipped by Microsoft, and it allows you to, in effect, use a Citrix kind of scenario or a terminal server where they just provide it for you, and you can sign up and you get the full Office suite. Plus, you can customize your solutions, and you can. I'm actually running version Access 2013 in a window on my Mac, full-featured Windows version, and I can also run it on my phone. I can also run it on my iPad. I can run it on my Windows phone. I can run it on my Android tablet because it's a form. Look at this. This is an Access application running on my Mac, running in the cloud. And it's fast.
Is it any slower, like if you're doing
No.
VPN, or is it
No.
just as?
No, because it's just a screen scraping tool. That's the thing, is you're using servers. What slows a VPN down is if you're connecting to your data, but you're still running a local piece of software, it has to suck all the data back to the local machine to do its thing, right? In this case, this is actually running on a server. All this is running on a server.
Very cool.
So the VBA and everything you could use on the phone because of the way that it's set up.
Absolutely, and I'm using the Mac. And in fact, what's cool about it, I mean, I have an iPhone 4, so if I showed it to you, you can't even read it. But if you have like an iPhone 6, you can basically, or an iPad, I've run it on my grandkid's iPad, you can actually use it exactly the way it is. You don't have to really build a new paradigm, a new interface. If you've got a screen that's big enough, and if you want, you could build a custom interface that actually targets a phone. I could, for example, have it come up and say, which device are you using? A phone, a tablet, or a PC or a Mac? And whichever one you choose, you could give them their own front end. And this is
very cool.
This is native access. But what's the other thing about it? One last thing I'm going to show you, and as I don't know how much, okay, it's still there. Let me try it again here. There's another sort of odd aspect of this. I know this is an Excel show. Okay, I'm going to show you in Excel. It's the same thing. There's something kind of interesting about this when you come down to it, which will be my last demo here. These connections here are actually connections to a SQL Azure database. So these tables are actually connected to a SQL Azure server. A SQL Azure server, which means my application is running in the cloud on a Microsoft server in remote desktop, and it's reaching out to a SQL Azure database, and it's running my Excel solution, or it's running my Access solution, full featured on any device I want to run it on. And I'm going,
cool.
What's wrong with this picture? Why would this not be common? Why would people not do this all the time, right? Now, the remote apps people are part of the Azure group at Microsoft, and they are capable, and they seem to get this. And they say, hey, you know, this is cool technology. We'd like to help people encourage it. So they're interested in people like us doing solutions like this. Say you had a solution, you could actually take a company that's distributed. Say how many times have you had a company, one of your small companies that has multiple offices, right? This way you could have one in the cloud solution, and everybody could go to it and use it in the cloud, right? Yeah. Or they could use it to do inventory out in the warehouse on their iPad, and it would feed directly into the SQL Azure database, which would be used at corporate head. I mean, it's a miracle, and it's cheap. It's like $10 to $15 a month per user, and you use your Office 365 license. You can use one of your licenses because you get 5, I think, and you can assign it, and there you go. So it's cost effective, and it works. So I don't know what to say. So anyway, is that enough of a tip?
Yes, it's not that common where I'm writing down the whole time the person's giving the tip, because I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to have to rewatch this video 4 or 5 times just to get all the links and everything. So
well, go to my blog. This is detailed in my blog.
We'll do that. We'll have a lot of links underneath here as well. On what do you think there, Oz?
No question. This is 5. This is 5.
Making him blink.
Because it's just like...
Out of what? Out of what? 5 out of what?
Out of 5.
Oh, geez, thanks.
Because you get me thinking again about all the capability that's out there. Embedding stuff on the web and everything, and you show me a different way that may not necessitate learning JavaScript.
No, you can take existing solutions and move them up. Boom.
Yeah. Wow. Well, wow.
You see,
that's some good stuff.
This means that Excel and Access can have a life. Now let's look at this. They've announced Windows 10 is, quote, the last version of Windows, which whoever said that at Microsoft should have been taken out in the back and shot, right? Because it's really not true, right? It's not the last version. They're just shifting to a different model. But the fact is that Windows, if something runs in Windows 10, I think you can expect it to run for another 20 years if necessary, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Office is not going to change either. Excel is not going to evolve much from now on either for the similar reason. Therefore, if you can get your application to run in Windows 10, in Excel 2016 or 13, you should be able to build a solution now that will run for 10 or 20 years. And the fact is that companies want that. They don't. There is a theory that everybody wants to change things all the time, and that's why you use Excel. True, to some extent. But there's an awful lot of business processes that never change.
Right.
Like I said, I have solutions that have been used for 25 years. And that's a big market. That used to be a big market. That's faded. And I'd like to see it come back. Not just for personal reasons, but it would help.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry guys. I guess you asked me here to sermonize.
Well, yeah. Well, hey, preach, brother, preach. Yeah.
You see, I used to be a preacher for this technology for the first 10, 15 years. That was my big thing. And I've spoken all over the world about this technology. I've actually been to Holland 7 times in the last 7 years to speak about this technology at a conference, separate from my other work in Holland, right? I've spoken in Australia. I've spoken in England, right? And yet in the last few years, I've had trouble getting enthusiastic, right? And now I'm getting enthusiastic again.
Yeah. I like this. Wow. Yeah, well, I tell you, when you talk about Microsoft and everything and the direction they're going, my concern is so much around enterprise and big data, enterprise and big data. Yeah, right. And it's like the popular thing to talk about. So Microsoft isn't the only one to blame, but I just feel like, I'm going to teach a workshop Friday at a nonprofit conference, and they're not big
They don't
data.
have big data.
No, but they've got data problems.
Exactly. You don't have to have a lot of data to have it be a problem.
Right. Yeah. So
Right.
if you forget to apply for this $20,000 grant, well, there you go.
I know, and the thing is that this is, I call it not so big data, right? And to
Yeah.
me, the combination of SQL Server with all its capabilities, Excel and Power Pivot and Power Query and all their capabilities, which once you wrap that all together, that's a pretty serious piece of software. You know that. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart to build solutions in that. My argument is there should be a more professional class of people doing Excel development, but Microsoft has dropped the ball on that. We used to have an Office Developers Council I was on for years. They dropped that, and now they have a council of CFOs and CIOs. So they don't care about us, right? But the actual fact is we've got to somehow build this up ourselves. And one thing we can't do is start fighting each other, too. That's another thing. There's certain people in the Excel community who have declared themselves gods. Well, that's got to stop, right? Because we either hang together or we all hang separately, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. And it's not just for our purposes, but the clients are missing out, right?
Okay. Let's move on. Let's move on to the what's up section. So what's happening in your neck of the woods? What's happening in the news? So I'm going to share my desktop here quickly. Okay, so
the satellite responded after the satellite dialed back to Earth. Is that something news? I don't know.
Oh, that is newsworthy.
let's
Good stuff.
Okay, so let's move on. First off, over at my blog, I just want to bring your attention to the, we're building out, we talked a little bit earlier about building out things that you're passionate about. So in my mind, there are really two types of Excel people. If you get past, well, let's say you get past, the mom who's just tracking her coupons or students, but there's really kind of two people. And in my mind, there's the application developers, which there are, people who kind of live and breathe in VBA, and they're building applications, and that's one piece of it. And another piece, a broad stroke I see, is really kind of business intelligence and analytics, where people who are doing reporting, people who are doing formulas, trying to figure out, statistics, etc., and even the group in Model Off is around that. That's a bit of my background. So I just bring this to your attention. We'll start blogging over here in the next day or so. We'll start off with how does Excel and things like the Hawthorne effect and things like that interplay with your analytics. Next up, talk about Office 2016 for Mac, which was released. So if you haven't taken a look at it yet, we saw from Dick's desktop, he's a Mac guy. I'm a Mac guy as well. So go out there and check it out. And if you want to find out more about this and really what are the pros and cons, by all means, don't do what I initially did, which is to go out and do a Google search for Excel Mac 2016 and try to get some opinions. Here's why. You'll see things from big magazines and things like that, and things, it's basically just it's junk. Right here I'm on page 4 of Google finally, and I'm still not seeing anything that's worth it. It's all from Microsoft, it's from InfoWorld, Mac rumors, people who aren't in Excel every single day playing with a tool. They're just writing opinion pieces that don't matter for anything. So if you're a hardcore user, do what I did. Go over and find the people who are in this tool every day and read their blogs. Here's an example of one of them. Bacon Bits over there by Michael Alexander. So check this out at DataPig. He writes about the Excel 2016 function changes. I'd recommend you go and check this out. Number 2, go over to Excel tables. Here's Zach Barisi, because in Mac 2016, sorry, in Office 2016, one of the big features is having slicers. Well, he talks a bit about that here because he's a tables guy, and the fact that it's not really there for tables yet. It's for pivot tables, but it's not necessarily for tables yet. Also, go over to Peltier's blog, John Peltier, where he talks quite a bit about this, where he goes into the highlights. And yeah, there are some good things here, and since he's a charts guy, predominantly what he's mostly known for. You know, he talks about some of the different chart types that are available now. They added waterfalls, histogram, Paretos, etc. But there's also some bad things. You know, things they still need to step up on, and particularly around 2016 VBA, etc. So if you're an application developer, you know, there's be some concerns for you as well. And lastly, hey, if you haven't seen it yet, go over to Dick Moffat's blog. Go check it out. We'll talk about this a little bit more as well, but you know, you've seen some of the tips, etc. Go over to themoffat.wordpress.com and check this out. I mean, you'll see a lot of the opinion pieces like we talked about earlier in the show here as well. And lastly, let's bring this back to me. As is often the case, the last bit of news here, as is often the case, there comes a time when stars of a certain show need to just.
Where are you at? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Now, am I good? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
There comes a point where stars of a certain show, you know, they need to move on. You can think about Colbert whenever he left the Daily Show and then ended up becoming bigger and all that sort of stuff. And similarly, we have our own star here on the show that's moving on. That's taken his own claim in the video world. Still be very much under the Excel TV brand, but this guy is going to spread his wings and leave the nest and start up his own video show here under the Excel TV brand. Mr. Oz du Soleil. Oz du Soleil. Would you mind just chatting a little bit about that?
Well, just thinking about some different takes on Excel and data, and maybe going a little outside of the Excel world and be more data and have some fun and bring some people in and get raucous. Yeah. So I am still in the lab with that, and it is raucous in the lab, so I want to bring some of that raucosity out to the viewers when it's ready, and it'll still be part of Excel TV.
Are you going to have a house band?
You know what? Now you get me thinking. Yeah, you want to play in it?
I played in the same band for 45 years.
Oh, what you play?
They were bluegrass band.
What instrument?
Guitar.
Okay. All right.
Sounds great.
Do you ever notice
Yes.
most developers actually do play an instrument? Not all, but a lot do.
For me. I'm
So-
not musically inclined.
You know, I heard a person at the last conference we were at. I was with Oz, and he said something to the effect of, "I would listen to Oz read the phone book."
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, you got
somebody
a
said
good
that.
thing.
So now you're going to get your chance.
Yeah. So it's gonna be fun. So this has been great. So stay tuned, and I will let everybody know what's next. Thanks. Yeah. So I got other news. Yes, this Friday I'm going to be teaching a 5-hour workshop at the AMP conference. It's a nonprofit conference that's been around for 30 years. It's happening at Portland State University Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I'm excited about it because it's a first. I was talking with one of the organizers, and she was describing how they don't focus on data and Excel, though that's everything. They'll focus on, board development and grassroots organization and grant writing. But this time we are going to be focused on Excel for 5 hours, and I'm looking forward to it.
Can I make a point here that what's really important about that is you're talking to business decision makers, right? And in this case, some of them are actually relatively small, which is good too. But the main thing is you're talking to business decision makers about these issues. That's key. That's awesome. I mean, if you don't get business out of that, then you're not as good a salesman as I think you are.
All right. We will see.
No, it's a good opportunity.
Yeah. I'm loving it. And people are starting to send me information, letting me see some of the spreadsheets that they work with, asking me about, let's be sure to work with this kind of thing, because they're dealing with some serious stuff. Stuff. If they've got like $100,000 to grant out, they need to take the different applicants through the vetting process on the timeline that was promised, and there's a lot that goes into making those decisions, and it's all data. Yep. And the last bit of news I'll share is that I'm going to start a Kickstarter campaign. I'm writing my second book. It's called Full Contact Data Management. And it would be nice to have illustrations to break up words and screenshots and add some excitement to this idea of full contact data management. And what is that? Reminder that Excel is a tool. Excel is your helmet or your jockstrap.
That's a new one.
Yeah, the first half of the book is conceptual. What is going to help you be successful in this dirty sport? How do you have to think about data? What happens when you get new data in? Look at the data quality first. Excel tricks, no time for that, not right away. So that's the kind of things that's happening in the first half of the book, and it would be nice to highlight that with good, relevant, fun illustrations, and that's what my Kickstarter campaign is going to be about.
If I may add, Oz, that is really important what you just said. That people need to know that, because the biggest problem now that Excel has gone completely data centric, which of course I've been using it forever, but with Power Pivot, with Power Query, the biggest problem is two things. One, getting data, and you should talk about that. How you work in a company and they say, "Can you go get this data from this guy? Talk to this guy," and he tells you to go jump off a roof. Right? Mm-hmm. I've had that, or worse, right? And then the second thing is bad data. They give you crap data, and the issue of how to manipulate that, right? There's a book out on that, and if you can talk about how you manage that, part of it's people issues, right? And then the other one is how do you get the data regularly? If you're going to do an Excel spreadsheet that's going to be a reporting tool, it's not a one-time thing. You want it every month or every week. And in the case of that solution I showed you, they do that every day for the last 8 years, right? And how do you get a repetitive, clean data source? These are the issues that you have to talk about, because you can't always use AdventureWorks or whatever the heck, right, to do data, right?
Yep, you are so right. Yep.
So you're right on the money. I'm 100% behind you, and if I can help you, that'd be great, Oz, if you're not.
Great, yeah, because you're talking about some things that I do talk about in the book is Amen. How do you get data? And then somebody says, well, I've got this canned report that kind of gets you what you want. Well, okay, but you got to say, okay, is the data you want in there, but do you know how to get it out and get it in the shape that you need it in?
Amen. Amen. Because they'd still want to give you it with page headers and page breaks and page numbers. And after all these years, it's just ridiculous.
And that's when you see, that's when the boxer drops his shoulders, because you know the uppercut is coming, and you move, and then you counterpunch. That is what's happening in this book.
Oh, I'm getting excited.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for that, Oz, and we'll be able to get the links from you. We'll make sure that we include that in the video as well. So lastly, where can you find us? And Dick, first off, we did show a brief screenshot of your website, but where can people find you if they're looking to employ you, they're looking to get a hold of you? How would somebody find you?
You could just type in my name, Dick Moffat, and the word Excel. I'm sort of all over the internet over the years. You can reach me at my blog. If you type Dick Moffat blog, that's your best way to find me. And you can reach me from there, of course. Or you can email me at dick@plogic.ca. Pretty simple. Shows how small a company. There's only one Dick in the company, right? It's just me, right? Yeah. Dick@plogic.ca.
And that's by your name also, underneath you all. The whole time.
Oh yeah, I actually put it on there. See, I did figure that out. Yeah. I'm pretty technical, guys.
Definitely. You're a bit of a wizard.
I'm a wizard.
So also, you can.
I think we all are, guys. I can tell.
Also,
I've been watching you guys for a long time.
Oh no.
I wouldn't come on here if I didn't respect you guys.
I appreciate that. Well, everybody, you can find us on YouTube, Google+, etc. But one of the exciting things that's happened recently is out here on YouTube. We've been around for about 16 months now or so. It's our 31st episode in the last 16 months, and we just passed we just passed a big barrier, which is we passed 100,000 video views on YouTube. So thank you very much for that. 16 months, 100,000. We'll take it. Next up, 1 million. So thank you very much for that. So you can follow us over there and feel free to subscribe to us. Of course, we're on Twitter and everywhere else. And to go ahead and close up here, Dick, it's been a I'm going to rewatch this video 2 or 3 times to be able to get your tips. Even just the connection screens and everything else. I think there's a lot of content there. People can go over to your blog and check that out. So thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I really, really, really appreciate the fact that you are interested in what I have to say.
Yeah, I'm glad you got. I'm glad we're here to share all of that.
Yeah,
like I said, we all going to hang together, or we're all going to hang separately.
Hey.
Absolutely, and Oz hasn't stopped smiling since you've been on the show, so he's found a kindred spirit, which is a good thing.
You told me to be entertaining.
Hey, I told you. Yeah. All right.
But I am going to have somebody else start my car in the morning. That's for a fact.
Anytime you make a guy in a purple shirt and a yellow bow tie smile, that's a good thing.
That's an accomplishment. Hey, thanks, boys.
So thank you very much, Dick. And until next time, this is Rick Grantham here with Jordan Goldmeyer and Oz Du Soleil, reminding you to keep on excelling. We'll see you next time.